Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside these shows while they are live, but most importantly, if you would like to join the debate, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules in the Hangout. Number 1, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, but if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Now, we do have a guest in the Hangout, so I'm going to transition across straight to the action. But before I do, if you are in the stream at the moment, please share the show on social media. Sharing the show, of course, increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of us having a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. And with that, I'll introduce our first guest. So we have Anthony Riley in nice and early. How you doing? Good to have you here.
Good morning. It's good afternoon, midday here in the UK. Looking forward to seeing what the baller's position is with regards to where the position of the lighthouse should be. Just to let everybody know, we've challenged Rumpus to do the maths and calculate where the lighthouse should be. 2 days almost have gone by. No response from Rumpus. We've had a response from Miles Davis, who claims the lighthouse is slightly off screen, far right. Obviously, I laughed at that one. But at least we now know what they're thinking in terms of what they should be thinking as a group, as a collective. So they should all come back with the same answer. So I'm looking forward to other people committing to where the lighthouse should be as well. Miles Davis has gone on the record and said where he thinks the lighthouse is. I'm looking for people like GeoStreber. Let me think. Come on, Nathan. Name drop some of these people that have been. So we've got GeoStreber. We've got Rumpus. We have Paul Voigt. By the way, Paul Voigt also claims that it's off the screen to the right. So he's applying the same maths that Miles Davis is applying. Who else? We need to name drop Nathan and get some of these people into a position where we can get them to commit to something, because there is genuinely a significant difference between their position and our position. I can't think of who the other people are.
There's not many people actually out there measuring it, making a model and such. I mean, Rumpus and GeoStreber stand alone in that respect, I think.
Stand alone in what respect?
Actually physically modelling it out and trying to figure out what they're looking at.
No, they're just applying the maths to it. They all believe in maths. So they've done it based on the amount of pixels per degree.
I asked Paul to tell me how much the camera was panning, and he didn't give me an answer.
No.
But now we know.
We know. We've got it modelled. Me and Nathan were up till 4 o'clock this morning, fine-tuning with Chris the bits and pieces that lead up to the presentation that we'll be doing. And it is literally putting things like a particular house into the picture, putting a particular structure. So we've got everything lined up, everything. So we know exactly what we're looking at. However, Rumpus also claims that he can calculate anything. So we have a genuine disparity between the two. So I think the obvious and really the only way that we're going to be able to present this is unrestricted. Rumpus did have 20 minutes or 25 minutes of unrestricted and uninterrupted access or debate or presentation when he did his refraction thing. And Chris came on graciously and got absolutely no words in whatsoever when he was trying to make his presentation. And since then, obviously, numerous things have happened. But Chris wasn't given any opportunity to speak. And he graciously spoke over everybody, made his point, but because the chat was so terrible, the panel was so terribly behaved on that day, he wasn't given any opportunity for anybody to hear any part of what was being said. They might have had the odd word here or there, but it was a catastrophic failure on our part because we weren't able to speak. That won't be happening again. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. It's going to be in the next probably 24 hours. It might even be within the next 12 hours. It depends on what Chris is up to today. But I think we're pretty much ready to go. But what I'd like to do is call more people, like Rumpus particularly, because he claims that he can calculate any part of the thing, and he can. I want to see your maths, Rumpus. I want to hear your claim. I did email you, and it's took almost 2 days now, and we've not had any response from you. It's a 10-minute calculation, Rumpus, because you already know the formula and the maths. You just have to apply it, which takes 5 minutes, and you can point out exactly where these things should be. And I'm calling you, I'm asking you, and I'm doing it publicly in front of everybody. I want to know what Rumpus's position is. So commit yourself, Rumpus. Miles has done it. And also, I want GeoStreamer. GeoStreamer, I've messaged you privately on Skype, and I've asked you for a third time to reconsider the question that's there. I've asked you twice for this question, and you've not given me an answer. I've asked you a third time on Skype, GeoStreamer. Could you answer and state your position, please? Where do you think that the lighthouse should be? The Point of Ayr lighthouse. Where do you think it should be on the map? It's coming to a really nice crescendo, and I think that if you're
nice concise answer from Paul, the north end of the Isle of Man is at 261.27 degrees.
Good enough? No. The request, Paul, is to identify on the evidence where you think the Isle of Man, the Point of Ayr lighthouse should be. So I want you to get the evidence, and I put X marks the spot. Put a mark so that we can see where you think it is. If your answer is consistent with Miles Davis's answer, in other words, it's off the paper to the right just, then I want you to say that. So I don't want you to give a bearing, because the bearing will match what it says on Google Earth. You know, your model that you don't like to commit to now, all of a sudden. So what I want you to do, Paul, is tell me where X marks the spot. Where is the treasure? Where is the Point of Ayr lighthouse? If your answer is it's off the page to the right, like Miles Davis's is, say them words. Be precise. And if you do come on the panel today, Paul, make sure you bring that molten iron evidence with you that I've been asking you for weeks. You claim that molten iron is able to self-perpetuate and create its own charge. I call BS. Been asking you for weeks and weeks and weeks to prove that assertion, Paul. And I know that you do go back and you do look for stuff and you present them on the next show when you believe that you're right. And you've done it 4 or 5 times now to different people. You did it with regards to the distant islands, and they're at a different contrast. You did it on a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have seen you go away, come back with evidence, and you've even done it with me once, which is great. So I'm putting you back on the guillotine. I'm asking you to prove your point that molten iron can be conductive when it's molten. I've reduced that down from when it's supercritical. To show that iron can be show that iron can self-perpetuate when it's molten. And using sodium as a comparison isn't accepted because, well, it's not iron, Paul. Who else was there? We need to name some of these people, these Ball Earth protagonists, because Curved Water appears to have left the job now. He's getting his P45 in the next couple of days. He hasn't been on the show for a while, and I think it's because he secretly realizes that we are actually seeing Ireland in the background. Oh, my position. I'll reassert my position just so that everybody's aware. I'm applying the globe model, the Ball Earth model, which is Google Earth. I don't care what any other map says. I'm applying that one because that is generally and unanimously pushed as your model that works. So I'm applying that regardless of what people say. And the values that it says, they're the values that we're putting in. Okay. If anyone disagrees with that, tough, because that is your model. Secondly, I'm going to go with a value of 35 and 50 feet because 35 is the lower value, 52 feet is the higher value. That's the way it is. Tough. We have never conceded that there is island not on the left or on the right. We've only discussed it for the sake of discussion. We've never conceded it. My position is still we're seeing island. It always has been and it always will be. So we're seeing island on the left, we're seeing island on the right, and we've got Isle of Man in the middle. Now, we have conceded it just for the sake of Paul addressing where the quarter mile of curvature is from Douglas. Paul's been demonstrated with a line of sight that we can see Douglas. When it was on the screen and you could see Douglas, Paul still maintains there is no line of sight. Paul now claims that if you stick your big toe out from around a corner, the big toe means that you've got a line of sight to Paul. Well, we're not seeing the big toe, are we, Paul? You're minimizing what we actually see in the evidence, and you're making it sound insignificant, so insignificant that you can't possibly genuinely give.
Just to correct you, though,
credibility
that is having line of sight, though. So if somebody has their toe out behind a wall, that means a sniper can shoot that person in the foot.
Yes.
So you do, if you see a toe, you do have line of sight with them.
And this reminds me of a legal case that I studied a few years back. It's R against Collins. And R against Collins was for the purposes of burglary. It was whether or not there was a significant entry into a dwelling. Now, in England, the law is a crime is committed, a burglary is committed if somebody enters a building with the intention to commit a crime, even if they don't do it. If they commit, so in other words, if you climb a ladder with all your tools, but for some reason you get distracted, you will be charged and convicted of burglary because you had the intention to commit a crime, but you have to enter the building. So R against Collins was about whether or not there was a significant enough entry for the purposes of the act. And it was to do with an erection. Okay. I'm not going to get too vulgar with it, but the guy got aroused whilst he was in the window. And technically, the argument in court was, did he make an entry to the building with the intent to commit a crime? And it was decided, I can't remember what the decision was, but I remember it was to do with the erection and whether it was significant enough entry for the purposes of the act. R against Collins. So anybody that wants to go and research it, just type in R.V. Collins, and it was either I think it was burglary he was charged with. It's a very interesting case to read. Very, very interesting. So yes, Paul, if your toe is peeping around the corner and a sniper can blow your toe off, you've got a line of sight there, Paul, haven't you? Because a sniper only needs a little bit of your body protruding and he'll snipe you. That's what line of sight means. So yes, if your toe is sticking around the corner, Paul, that is sufficient to satisfy the requirement for a line of sight. And I would cite R.V. Collins as the authority for it. In fact, I'm going to go and do that right now because it's been a while and I want to remind myself of the facts.
While you do that, could do some shout outs, I suppose. All
Here we
way
go.
to the top.
Let me read this before you do the shout-outs.
Okay, you found it already. Good.
R.V. Collins, 1973, is a case decided by the Court of Appeal in England and Wales which examined the meaning of enters as a trespasser in the definition of burglary. Collins was a 19-year-old man who had been convicted of burglary with intent to commit rape and sentenced to a term of imprisonment. The facts were described by Edmund Davis, L.J., as quote, being so improbable as to be unworthy of serious consideration as verging on times of farce, unquote, had they been a play. The victim, an 18-year-old girl, went to bed at her mother's home in Colchester. She had spent the evening with her boyfriend and was intoxicated. She had the habit of sleeping without any clothes in a bed which was very near the window of her room, which was wide open. At around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, she awoke and she saw in the moonlight a male, brackets Collins, who's the defendant, crouched in the open window. She was unable to remember whether the form was on the outside of the windowsill or on the part of the sill which was inside the room. The male was naked and had an erect penis and blonde hair, leaping to the conclusion that her boyfriend was paying her an ardent nocturnal visit. She promptly sat up in bed, and the man descended from the sill and joined her in bed, and they had full sexual intercourse. But there was something about him which made her think that things were not as they usually were between her and her boyfriend. The length of his hair, his voice, or the features that led to the conclusion that somehow there was something very different. She turned on the bedside light and saw that her companion was not actually her boyfriend and slapped his face. And he said to her, "Give me a good time tonight," quote, and took her arm. But she bit him and told him to leave. She then went to the bathroom and he promptly vanished. Collins was arrested and charged with burglary with the intent to commit rape, tried at the Essex Assizes, whatever that is, and convicted. He was sentenced to 21 months imprisonment and appealed against the conviction. But Collins's barristers submitted a report during the first instance trial that because she'd invited him into the bedroom under a mistake of fact, Collins had not entered as a trespasser. The judge rejected this submission. There had been an issue as to where exactly Collins had been at the time of her mistaken invitation, outside the window on the sill or already inside the bedroom, and the evidence was inconclusive on that point. Decision. The point in issue had not been previously decided, so there was no previous authority on which the court could rely. Instead, the textbooks were consulted. Having examined these options, the court ruled that the person entering, quote, must do so knowingly that he is a trespasser and nevertheless deliberately enters, or at the very least is reckless as to whether or not he is entering the premises of another without the party's consent, unquote. The court considered that on the facts, the judge had misdirected the jury on this test, even though the timing had been unclear. It was also considered off the record that civil law concepts such as trespass and occupancy status were irrelevant to the criminal law. Accordingly, the court allowed the appeal on the basis that the jury had never been invited to consider whether, in fact, Collins was a trespasser when he entered the bedroom initially. His conviction was duly quashed. So the issue was, how much of an entry was there? Was he sat on the window ledge on the outside, or was he sat on the window ledge on the inside? And it's that threshold, that boundary, that is the relevant factor. So was he on the inside or was he on the outside? And Paul's arguing that if it was his toe sticking through, would that be enough for me, the way I translate what Paul says, is that enough to translate into legal fiction that there was a substantial entry, what in this case was there a line of sight? And absolutely it would be the case that that toe peeping around the corner would be classed, in my opinion, as being on the inside. It was an entry. Whether it was significant or not is irrelevant. It was a line of sight. It was an entry. So I would cite R.V. Collins, Paul, for the toe peeping around the corner because it would still be shot. I agree with Nathan. Is this law school? We want to hear you say a few more times that your viewing height is only 35 feet. Paul, there were the two videos that are out there at the moment. 35 feet is what my position is because that's what your model says. So yes, I will say that over and over and over and over and over and over again. It is your model. The fact that you now suddenly reject your model, Paul, I don't mind. Honestly, I don't mind you rejecting it, but I'm going to be reminding you over and over and over again, Paul, because that is your model. You can come back with different heights if you want. It adds to the drama. Yeah, I get it. Yes, there's a discrepancy between the models, but nonetheless, your model is still not right. And I'm going to keep singing that song because I don't agree with changing the height of your model because it is your model. Would you allow me to fudge the figures to make my model suit if my model didn't do what it's supposed to do? No, you wouldn't. Nobody would. You would laugh at me and call me a fool or a liar or a this or a that or the other. So no, Paul, we're sticking with 35 feet on the video that I've released because that's what it was. I maintain that position and I won't be changing it. Anyway, can you tell us in no uncertain terms what your viewing height is for the second video? No, I can't, Paul. I was somewhere between the 35 feet and the summit. So, I mean, the summit is counted as 52 feet. So I'm happy with anywhere along that. But you're not having 52 because I've got a video at the summit that you haven't seen. So you're not having 52. You're having somewhere between 35 and 52, and that's it. And it's no uncertain terms, meaning applying your model, Paul, not some other level of measurement, because we're testing your model. We're seeing, is your model doing what your model's doing? And I'll keep coming back to that point. And I know you hate it. And I know you think the Ordnance Survey is some way more credible or whatever. But the fact is, Paul, it isn't your model, is it? The Ordnance Survey, as we discussed yesterday, is flattened out from a sphere or from an oblate spheroid or a tangerine shape, whatever you want to call it. Looking forward to seeing your molten iron evidence, Paul, by the way. Let's not forget about that.
Just for the audience, can you remind them what evidence you have tasked Paul with sorting out for you?
What evidence, Paul? You want about the positioning of the lighthouse?
No, the molten iron core.
Oh, the molten iron core is a debate that we had about a month ago. And the position on the heliocentric model, which they all say has got nothing to do with the shape of the Earth, but it does. Anyway, the ball is made. It has a solid iron core, a little bit of nickel, probably a little bit of other things as well. But it's supposed to be it's a solid core, but held together by pressure. It's supercritical, which means it's way above its melting point and its boiling point. It becomes a gas and it becomes crazy. But they still want us to believe that it self-perpetuates its own magnetic field as well as its own electrical charge, and it self-perpetuates. If it doesn't self-perpetuate, it receives its external perpetuation from somewhere else. Paul maintains that there is a molten core or a solid core that's supercritical, and he believes and accepts that it is indeed iron. And when asked to produce evidence to prove that iron, when it's in its molten or supercritical state, can create its own charge or create its own magnetism, Paul was unable to produce it. So Paul was tasked with the evidence to try and prove his position. Paul said that there was evidence out there. He said it because it was the same as sodium, and I said no, sodium is not the same. It may well be a magnetic property of sodium. However, sodium also reuses its crystalline status to create the charge. It's essentially piezoelectric, and iron does not have that property. So I wanted to see proof and evidence that proves that iron does actually do what Paul believes it does. And at least a month down the line, probably maybe 3 weeks down the line, no evidence yet from Paul. And I'm keeping asking him because he's hoping this one goes away. And I want Paul to either drop it and accept that he's dropped it or produce the evidence. But I'm going to keep asking him, Paul, because you've made an assertion that the iron core of the Earth is iron and that it self-perpetuates in some magic way because of convection currents and convection and radiation and all these weird things that you call inertia, that basically is inertia. You describe the core of the Earth to be inertia bound. It creates itself its own movement creates its energy like a dynamo, like a nuclear, like a power station. I call BS. Iron does not do that. I cited evidence from the Coal Deep super bore mine that produced boiling hydrogen. That was laughed at, literally laughed at. I produced the evidence that showed it was true. It wasn't accepted, but nonetheless, there was no evidence that iron had anything to do with it in any way. I also showed evidence that the density of rock changed and it got less as it got lower. It didn't get more dense. I also showed that seismic readings that predicted what they would get were completely out because they didn't know until they actually did it, which is the problem with things like maths and predictions, because anything that's non-empirical based can be wrong, which is why we're asking Paul and Rompus and Miles Davis and all you other cronies that are all out there that think you know all the answers because maths gives you the answers. That's why we're asking you to state your position with regard to the point of Ayr Lighthouse. Where is the lighthouse? Do your maths. Let's put all your heads on the block. Let's chop them all off because you're all going to be made to look silly. Why? Because maths doesn't do what you think it does. Maths is subject to the person that's using the maths. That's why we wanted a model, a 3D model based on a computer, because it removes the human element, in this case, Rumpus. So again, in the chat. Rumpus, if you're out there...
He doesn't seem to be giving you an answer. He says, ha ha ha. Riley calls bubbles of hydrogen boiling. I can't read that last bit. Boiling hydrogen.
I'm looking. Is it his most recent comment?
Riley calls bubbles of hydrogen, quote, boiling hydrogen.
Riley calls bubbles of hydrogen boiling hydrogen. No, actually, Paul, I cited it from the reference and it was mud that was boiling with hydrogen. It was mud, Paul. So I didn't call bubbles of hydrogen boiling hydrogen. The phraseology in the citation was boiling mud with boiling hydrogen. That was the words that they used.
There's your gish galloping, but you've just asked him a very direct question about this molten iron core.
He's humouring me with ball earth nonsense.
Right.
See, I don't take the position that Tim Osmond takes, which is he doesn't have to produce any evidence. He can come on and gish gallop as much as he wants, and that appears to be what Paul is saying. It appears that Paul doesn't think evidence proves stuff. It appears that Paul thinks that logic and reason proves things, and I'm saying BS. What proves things is evidence. So if there is an iron core, Paul, produce evidence that shows that iron can self-perpetuate. If you can't produce evidence that shows that iron can self-perpetuate, it can't do it. Sorry, Paul. So was it boiling mud or boiling hydrogen? It was boiling mud. Would you like the reference again, Paul, for the benefit of you? Because obviously you weren't paying attention. I'm sure Nathan remembers it. Do you remember it, Nathan?
Yeah, I remember. That's why I got you to say it again, because you talk about it, but obviously you move on in the conversation, or in this case we don't move on because Paul's provided nothing. Nick saying Groundhog Day.
Evidence, flat Earth. Yeah, we have some.
Yeah. The people who are saying, oh, you're still talking about the Isle of Man. Yeah, it's one of, if not the best, flat Earth evidence I've seen to date, and I'm more than happy to talk about it till the cows come home.
Because we're always being challenged. What evidence have you got of a flat Earth? Well, this
Here you go. Here's a picture of the Earth being completely flat. Oh no, there's a curve really there. You just can't see it. Here's the maths. No, there's no curve. Do you think, now that you've asked a few questions about this lighthouse and its position, do you think they'll figure out why you're asking?
No, I want them to commit to it. I want them to commit to their maths that they push on us to tell us that this proof, literally, what's his name? Rumpus, his words were along the line of, and I'm paraphrasing, but his words were, I can calculate anything on that island now that I know the ratio. I can tell you anything. And I'm like, okay, let's test it. So I want to know where that lighthouse is, Rumpus, because I want to see that your maths is as accurate as you claim it is. And when we do the presentation, Rumpus, I will be I will be playing your exact words in the Hangout when you made the claim. And if you take the position that Miles Davis has and the position that Paul has, you're going to be made to look stupid.
Yeah, Paul saying from the chat, anything. Whoops, where did the rest of the Isle of Man go? So clearly, Paul doesn't think the entirety of the Isle of Man is in that very wide sweep that you did. Interesting, Paul, interesting. Clearly, Paul would know the angular size at the distance and how big the pan would have been. I'm sure he can work that out. He's a clever guy. Maybe he'll do that and figure out where he's going wrong. In the meantime, thanks for that assertion, Paul. Whoops, where did the rest of the Isle of Man go? So you're essentially saying the Isle of Man isn't in the image. Some of it's missing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Paul. Thanks for letting us know that.
It appears to be. It's really going to be interesting.
Hold on. I told you, Riley, it's off to the right of the composite image. How much more do you want? No, that's perfect, Paul. That's absolutely perfect. Well, Nathan, where did it go? Where did what go? Where did what go, Paul?
Where did what go, Paul? What are you referring to?
What's gone? I don't understand what he's on about. Do you?
I think he's on about the lighthouse.
Oh, the lighthouse.
Where did the lighthouse go? Oh, he means the obstruction on the horizon. Yeah,
Where's
there's a little tiny bit of like refraction-y, mirage-y thing on the horizon. We'll give you that, a little tiny bit, but it's negligible, Paul.
Maybe he's implying that Ranty's left it off the composite. He's left a bit of the Isle of Man off. Maybe that's what he's implying.
No. I think he's done it because it's not on the composite, because that was where the evidence stopped.
Cigar Face says Nathan Oakley should be beaten with a dildo.
Morning, Make 4. Feeling like I should come in and get sniped. Oh, Make 4, I can add you on Skype if you want. Do you want to come in on Skype, Make 4? I'm only sitting here like a sitting duck anyway. I'll get sniped at some point.
Is it just me, or is there a distinct lack of globe heads today?
Yeah, there is.
Keep the typically very vocal Paul voice has become a keyboard warrior. This is amazing. I don't really get it.
Yeah, Paul. Why are you in chat, Paul? You would normally be in here telling me how stupid I am. Come on. I'd rather you come in, Paul, and get it on camera so that when we strip off the point where you say, of course it's off the camera, Anthony. That's what I want to hear. I want to antagonize you. And so you say it in that pompous attitude that you have, because it's going to, the victory is going to be so much sweeter when we show how wrong your mathematics are. Because I'd like to know what gives you what it was that got you to the point. I'd like you to explain your position, because from our position, it's hugely different. So I'd like to know what your thought process was. What was it? Was it purely mathematical that you were applying, or was it some other element of like science? What were you actually doing? Because we have a massive disparity between the two. We have a guest.
We've been joined by Shield Scanner.
The Illuminati. It's actually a banana.
Make 4, how you doing? Good to have you.
Marvellous.
If you get sniped, there's no one in here.
Waiting on it. That's it. You see? What? So it's not you guys, is it at all? It's the damn Globers.
Oh, it is.
Getting their balls all over the place.
I think what's difficult, I mean, I reckon Matt Taylor's been sacked from his postman job, or he's finished his post round early, because he's not normally on this early, Matt Taylor. So I see him in chat, so I'm guessing he's finished his paper round early.
No, he's in chat. He's there.
I know, yeah. He's not normally on the early show.
There's now going to be daily shows, so this is the show daily about this time from now on.
Here we go. Show us a game. No, hang on. Show us a game where Douglas is on your footage, Riley. We want to see your mate's girlfriend house. Okay, I can do that. Can you show evidence of the street sign or house number? Perhaps a car parked in front of the house. Yeah, I'll deal with that. What I need to do is go back to the boiling hydrogen first, because that's what I was looking at, and I keep getting distracted. Come on, it's in here somewhere. The Kohler super deep borehole is here we go.
Super Iron 70. So, what's going on? What are you guys doing?
You're just keeping everybody up to date with the flat Earth debate. There are issues outstanding. There is a genuine, massive disparity between what they're predicting is where the point of our lighthouse should be, and what we get it as, and just letting people know that there is a disparity, and we're trying to get them to prove that.
I hope you are enjoying the debate thus far. Not much of a debate, as we are a little bit shy of globe heads, but nonetheless, fun. If you are new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you've been enjoying these streams and you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. But if you would like to join the debate, simply click on the mute button on the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules in the Hangout. Number 1, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. If you've not done so already, please share the show, as sharing increases the live audience, of course, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate.
Go on, Mick, for what we saying.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask some other points. Like, I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you, because I think I tried to ask you once before. I'm interested to hear what you have, as points. Like, what's your biggest points about flat Earth? And obviously, lately this Isle of Man thing is one of them, of course. Obviously,
No,
so
it's not. It's not. I mean, this just proves that there is no curve and stuff. My biggest point for why it's a flat plane, I don't actually push that it's flat, because to push that it's flat means you've got to prove that it is flat and it's everywhere. I push that it's not a ball of the size they tell us, because I actually consider the possibility that we could be geocentric, but we could be the size of Jupiter. I'm not saying that we are. I'm just considering the possibility that we could be geocentric. But the reason why I am on the flat Earth side is because there is a preponderance of evidence to support it not being the case that we're told. And there is a huge absence of credible or verifiable or repeatable evidence to support the 3 key principles of the model, namely the curvature. We can't repeat curvature anywhere. We have one ball earther that pushes curvature over a lake that is basically in a swamp at the bottom of what's the word I'm looking for? It's in the bottom of a sump, where it collects all the coldest of air at the bottom of the sump. And he does observations on that lake, and they are 16-mile observations, and that's pushed as proof of curvature, not considering refraction at all. I mean, refraction on the flat Earth side is the way things appear to look in the atmosphere. On the ball Earth side, it's cancelling out the curve, but on the flat Earth side, it's just distorting what we see. If you see it, you see it. It doesn't rise and fall beyond any curvature. It's just there's no basis on the rate. That 76R bit doesn't exist on the flat Earth side. So with regards to the curvature, that bit is lacking in evidence to support its truth. Axial rotation, there is no evidence to support it or to be able to prove that axial rotation is actually a thing. The nearest that they've got is the ring laser gyroscope, which is affected by electromagnetic effect. And they are measuring and observing the move in the ether around us, not us moving around the ether. So that point isn't proven. It simply isn't there. They argue it and they say it is, but it isn't. It really isn't. If it was, I'd be on the other side of the fence. And the final point is gravity. Gravity is nonsense. It's literally, we cannot prove gravity is true because we can't get into space to test it. Now, they tell us in space there is no gravity because we're outside of the gravitational field of Earth. But that makes it totally impossible for us to be able to prove that it is a thing. The only thing that we can prove is density over buoyancy. And they hate it when we say that because they make it sound that we oversimplify it. But we're not. We're applying exactly what we see. If you drop something like a microphone, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the reason why it falls is because the microphone is denser than the air that the microphone sits in. But if you put the microphone in tar, it's going to sit on the top of the tar because the tar is more dense than the microphone. So you can put, I mean, it maybe eventually it might break the surface and fall through. I don't know. I'd have to test it and we'd have to produce evidence to prove what it actually did. But my assertion would be that on tar, it probably wouldn't drop into it because it's less dense than the tar that is. So in other words, the tar would stay at the bottom. And all we observe when we drop the microphone, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is relative density. It's relative to the environment it's in, which of course is the reason why we float in water. Take a deep breath, we float, let that air out, and we sink. It's because we're making ourselves more buoyant because most of our body, 70% of our body is water, apparently. It's coincidence that when we go in water, we pretty much, we can float. We need to change our buoyancy a little bit by taking in a deep breath. And obviously, if we lose our breath, then we sink. We have to swim. But it seems to me that we are relatively dense in our own environment or relatively buoyant in our own environment, which is, of course, why a deodorant can. If you have to shake a tin of deodorant, because if you don't shake the tin of deodorant first, everything separates within the tin. It all separates because we are basically in a fractional distillation column where we sit in a layer, and that layer is where we live. We breathe the air of this layer.
Sorry, I'm just kind of going off on chat people right now as well. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like if the ISS is going around there, this is one thing I've said before, which is like if you're in the ISS, if the only thing keeping you in orbit is Earth, then like you should be dragging towards the Earth, like technically, shouldn't you? Like, you're relative with the pressurized cabin, but still the Earth would have an effect on you, wouldn't it? So I feel like people in the ISS that are kept in orbit by the Earth's gravity, which is pulling on the ship to keep it there in gravity, and it's going quite fast, so it's quite a pull to, balance it out.
How you doing, Philip? Good to have you here.
Good morning. Well, whatever time it is for y'all.
Midday-ish. Good to have you here.
It does. Okay.
The reality is we only know what we can prove, and the super deep Kola bore mine showed that despite the best seismic, how many times have you heard people saying, well, they know what the core is because of seismic recordings and seismic measurements, yet their own seismic measurements at a depth of just 8 miles were wrong. We only know what we know, and if we don't know it, we're guessing. And it's like I say, if you've got 2 ice creams and I've got 2 ice creams, how many ice creams do we have? The answer, of course, is 0, unless you actually have the ice creams. So if you get predictions and seismic graphs to make predictions and all that, it's how you interpret them. But you don't know anything until you actually do it.
I like your Jupiter idea. Maybe we're as big as Jupiter. Maybe there's like 6 suns.
I don't know. I'm just looking for me boiling hydrogen mud citation that I had last time we had this conversation. But
what is that in relation to? What are you even talking about?
The super deep, the Kola super deep borehole is a hole that they've drilled into the earth. Yeah, and all the predictions turned out to be haywire. What they thought they were going to get, they didn't get. They thought there would be a more dense layer of rock as it went down, and it actually got less dense. They thought that they would get evidence of particular minerals and evidences that support the idea that there's an iron core, and they got hydrogen. They didn't get iron. They got loads of hydrogen, and it was described as boiling mud. And I'm trying to find that citation now, and I can't find it.
Huey has just said from the chat, and at first I read it and thought he was joking.
They were expecting to find iron at like what, a few miles down?
Yeah, if the Earth had a core that was made of iron, you would expect to find evidence that supported iron being there in some way, because you would expect to find iron deposits throughout the core, because you would have like seepage through you, because the crust, the mantle and the crust, what the crust essentially used to be mantle at one point. It's now become the crust because it cools, but as time goes by, you would expect to see evidence that there was an iron core, because where did the crust come from? The crust is the cooled part of the magma and the layers.
Well, it's not like we don't find iron in the earth, right? Like there are iron in mines.
Yeah, but what they found, there are mines of iron, you're right, but what they actually found was huge quantities of basically boiling hydrogen mud. Now, I've said that, and I'm trying to find where it says. I can't find it.
Does sound a little bit scientific there.
There's also helium in the crust too.
How could
That's where we mine helium.
No, we don't mine helium.
Yeah, we do.
Right, all right, so, come on, you're going to have to produce evidence to support that assertion.
Oh, I have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure because helium is less dense than our atmosphere, so it escaped.
Yeah, that's right. So we can't mine it.
Well, no, it's underneath the Earth's surface. So because if it was above the Earth's surface, it would float and escape the atmosphere.
Yeah, they don't mine it. That's the reason. Like, so again, give us
It's a byproduct of oil, usually.
Maybe it is.
Certain gases, as they're getting sludges out, all kind of sludgy stuff, like gases are within that stuff, and like it, you can get gas out of it. What are you talking about? Crazy.
I mean, I'm not claiming to be an expert on this. I just remember hearing that from somewhere. So, but yeah, I mean, if there's hydrogen in the crust, there might be helium too.
Yeah, found it. I'm gonna have to bookmark this page because this was not that easy to find when I was put on the spot. Right, so Nath, if you would present me, if you would, that would be great. Right, so share screen, top screen. All right, so you see my screen?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have all the deep super bore mine. All right, so what I did was I searched in Google for call a super deep borehole, and I had to work my way through the results. And this particular one's talking about what they were expecting. It's from the unknown but not unhidden.com website. Not familiar with it, may not be credible, may be credible, don't know, maybe creating confusion. But it seems
like
legit.
They have some references there, so it might be good to look at the sources.
Yeah. But the point of it is, it's in the research part of it. It says to scientists, I'll make this a bit bigger so you can see it. Because I got accused of misreading something yesterday from Paul, which turned out to be, when I listened to it back again, I didn't misread it at all. Paul just simply rejected what was read, and then said that I made a mistake. And I didn't make a mistake, Paul. I read it exactly the way it was written. Anyway, to scientists, one of the more fascinating findings was to emerge from this well is that no transition from granite to basalt was found at the depth of about 7 kilometers, where the velocity of seismic waves had discontinuity. So obviously they were using seismic waves to predict that granite would change to basalt, and it didn't happen. Okay, so that shows how seismic predictions can be wrong. Instead, the change in the seismic wave velocity is caused by a metamorphic transition in the granite rock. Whatever that means. I know what it means, but I don't know what it means in this.
I think that just means the density of the rock changed in granite.
Yeah, but it got less dense, not more dense, which is what they were expecting based on the seismic waves. In addition, the rock.
Well, I think that's what the basalt is less dense than granite, so I think that's why they were assuming that it would change from granite to basalt. But instead, what happened was it went from some more dense rock to a less dense rock.
Instead, the change in the seismic wave velocity is caused by a metamorphic transition in the granite rock. In addition, the rock at that depth had been thoroughly fractured and was saturated with water, which was surprising. This water, unlike surface water, must have come from the deep crust minerals and had been unable to reach the surface because of a layer of impermeable rock. Another unexpected discovery was a large quantity of hydrogen gas. The mud that flowed out of the hole was described as boiling with hydrogen. and you wouldn't expect there to be much hydrogen. Yeah, all right, it's an abundant element, I get it, but
Yeah.
a boiling hydrogen mud came out of the hole.
I mean, it could just be hydrogen gas, which is trapped in the Earth's surface.
How you doing, Mike?
Now being released.
It does say the mud that flowed out of the hole was described as boiling with hydrogen, which I found really quite interesting. And now what I'll do, whilst I've got the screen share on, Paul said, can you show where Douglas is in the evidence, please?
That's why I bring that up. How you doing, Mike? Good to have you here.
Morning.
Morning to you too.
We've been very clear on it, Paul. Let's play back, make it slow, speed, slower. We've been very clear on where we've identified Douglas to be, Paul, and we've had a guy that lives in the Isle of Man and has asserted to be true that we've correctly identified Douglas, and he's volunteered to bring as many mates on from as many of his mates on from the Isle of Man as necessary, basically to laugh at you that they know what Douglas looks like and we're stupid and we don't know what Douglas looks like, and a guy from Australia or New Zealand or wherever it is that you're from sure as hell doesn't know what Douglas looks like. So if you're going to really assert, Paul, that we've got Douglas misidentified, fine. However, what you think is Balacanal is actually behind the rocks that are here. Balacanal is around about here somewhere. You may see a couple of the dots that are the highest points, but there are cliffs in the front here. There are hills that are completely blocking Balacanal. And you didn't tell anybody that, Paul, did you? So when you claim that it was Balacanal, no, Paul, it's not. Balacanal is blocked by these hills. There may be a couple of buildings on the fringes of Balacanal, but no, Paul, you've got it wrong. Douglas is this part here. There's a little bit of an overlap of the town that's adjacent to it, or in our case, closer to us. And I'll show it on screen for the benefit of everybody that's not sure.
You know why he's asserting it's Balacanal, though, don't you?
Because he needs it to be he needs Douglas to be further off the screen.
Correct. He's got the scale wrong.
He needs to create confusion that Douglas is out the screen and therefore it's consistent with curvature. That's what he's trying to do. He's obfuscating dishonestly. I don't believe Paul honestly believes his position. He's had a guy that lives in Isle of Man. Come on, and I don't know the guy before you all start asking, but I don't know the guy. I met him on this channel because of this observation. And I say met him, I mean it not literally, I mean it virtually. There's Douglas. There's the line of sight that Paul refuses to accept exists because that's effectively Paul's big toe. So it just kisses the rock edges here, and we see the part of the anywhere along there we can see. And when we zoom in, we can see that there is industry here. I'll have to turn this around so I get the right angle. So I'll spin that around. You can see that there are oil silos. You can see that there are let's move that up a little bit. There's a shipping port. There's industry and commerce around the mouth of Douglas here. And we also see, which is on the line of sight, Paul, the town centre. We're seeing banks, building societies, tall buildings that are literally town centre. And you can tell the tall buildings because some of them are actually three-dimensional. And you can see that they are at least 4 stories high. And there are other ones that will be bigger, but I'm guessing that they will add to this over time. But you can see it's town centre, and it is indeed the capital of the Isle of Man. So we do have a line of sight. And back in Flat Earth Debate 77, the one that's described on Nathan's channel as Ding Ding, Paul from the Isle of Man said, when I came on and I said that this tuft of trees was Douglas, Paul agrees with me. And he said that's really where it should have stopped because the debate's over at that point. Paul said that I was right. Paul from the Isle of Man said I was right. Paul Voigt is now claiming that we're misidentifying it. And Paul's saying that we're seeing Balacanal. Now, Balacanal is the town that's here. You can just about see it here. But look what happens when you go behind the rocks, Paul. We're not seeing Balacanal. You might get a couple of the buildings on the left. And as we zoom out, you might get a little bit of change to do with the whatever. But these are blocking it. So that leaves the only things that we could see, possibly, are these ones here, which is not Balacanal, Paul. This is a town called something else. Let's see if we can find out what the name is. This is Baldrine. Now, even Baldrine is in a valley, so some of it's being blocked. You may see 1 or 2 houses of Baldrine. I agree and concede. However, when you go behind Baldrine, you have Douglas. And if all the stuff that we're seeing and the triangle shape is all the houses that are on the higher parts of Douglas.
You see the port? It's massive.
Pardon?
The port. The port is in the line of sight. To say you can't see it is preposterous. because you can see the port.
I agree. So when I go back to the evidence and I put the evidence on screen for you all to see, there's the line that's coming down. Baldrine sits in behind here. Whatever the other name was that I just read is around about here somewhere. And then you're looking at the corner of the port. And if we zoom into these forensically with zoom, you can see that all these are big structures. They are commercial. They're not residential. Now, Paul wants me to identify the car with the number plate.
Don't eat
Paul?
crayons.
Huh?
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Paul wants me to identify the car with the number plate. Paul, there's the car with the number plate, that little white dot. I'm asserting that that little white dot is the car with the number plate on it. And guess what? You can't prove me wrong. In the same way that you can't prove a lot of the things that you say, and you expect us to just accept it to be true. So I'm going to say that that's his car with his number plate on it, and there's the street signs next to it. And you can't prove me wrong, Paul. Can you? So if we're going to get funny about trying to interpret its ridiculousness, I mean, do we draw the line with reasonableness? You can see that we're not going to realistically see a car. But if you're making me try and prove one, I'll just make an assertion, Paul, and you can't prove it wrong, just like you can't prove a lot of things wrong, or indeed right. So if it's going to get silly, Paul, fine. There's Paul's toe peeping out from the corner as well. Nathan's in that window there. He's waving back to us right now. He's broadcasting from there right now. Hi, Nathan. And I'm going to be in this one here, this big one over here, because that's where my hot tub is. So I'll be in this one over here. And I reckon Make 4, you can probably be in this tall one here. Where do you want to draw the line, Paul? What would you realistically expect to see from
Hold on.
51
No.
miles away?
You can't get away with that. Paul's too smart for you. So he said, where's the registration number?
It's on the car, Paul. There's the car.
Let's have it.
Just at the side of the house.
Let's have that registration plate. Read it out to me.
It's PAULSUX. That's the registration.
Come on.
You must have a long neck to move your head for that far to get behind the rocks. No, Paul, you can clearly see that all these buildings here, and it isn't a lot of the Port of Douglas, I agree, but all of these are exactly where you would expect Douglas to be, and not just exactly where you'd expect them to be. They're exactly where we can prove them to be. You've got to calculate it using maths. We can prove it. So without using maths, we use maths as the byproduct of what we're doing. We've modeled it. We know exactly where all of these things are. And Paul needs this. Paul literally needs, this is where the dishonesty comes into it. Because Paul, let me just play that. No, it's gone too far. Paul needs Douglas to be down here somewhere. And then he could argue that it's behind the curve. But the reality is, this is, and has been verified by someone that lives there, this is Douglas. Because this, Paul, this tuft of trees, has been correctly identified as Douglas Head. And then Isle of Man pretty much stops about here. So all of this other land, all this other stuff that's over here, all of this, Paul, needs to be explained. And you can't do it because you've misidentified Bala Canal and Baldrine.
I guess if I had to speak for Paul, I'd say he would think that Douglas is hidden by the curve.
Yeah, he has to argue that position. But when a guy that lives in Douglas, that knows what it looks like because he travels to and from the Port of Douglas on his boat because he comes back to Liverpool regularly, when he comes on and he says, hey, I live there, that's Douglas. That's enough for me to think that we've got it right. But also, there are other people that are saying, yeah, that's Douglas. That's Douglas. And they're from...
So one thing I would suggest is that the next time you do this measurement, I mean, you've got this flare idea, which would definitely kind of help delineate what part of the island is actually, part of the island. But is there any way you can hook up some sort of compass or some sort of thing on your tripod to get the actual bearings of your camera?
I could put a compass on the top of the camera, but the problem is that I would then have to read off what the bearing is. Now that's open to human error, but because I'm a liar, then they wouldn't accept it anyway. So practically, you'd have to get someone on screen, and I don't know how that would work with the P900. So I mean, I suppose you could. It wouldn't be accurate if you tried to show it on screen either, because it changes.
Does the tripod have an angle on it, at the bottom where the camera attaches to the where it swivels, I guess?
No, it doesn't, and I might be able to sort that one out. But even if it was, they would literally say that I lied about where north was, or that I was incompetent and couldn't line it up with north. Did you adjust for declination? It's only 1 degree. I wouldn't. There's nothing that I can do that they would be happy with. So
how long is
I'm
the
reluctant
ISS
to do
been going
anything.
for again?
but I'll do anything that's reasonable. Sorry?
Hasn't the ISS been going almost 20 years up there?
The ISS?
Yeah.
Yeah, something does appear to be up there, yeah. Are there any humans in it, though?
Oh, maybe monkeys?
Monkeys?
Yeah, maybe, possibly. Dead monkeys,
Yeah,
probably.
they control the world, clearly. And they just chill up there in the ISS for 20 years. Someone sends them petrol, but heaps of petrol. I don't know, a bit of petrol.
One of the best things.
Why would they need petrol?
What are you talking about?
Oh, and the moon rockets. Someone is supplying that thing with a lot of gas. Like, that thing needs to keep going as well.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's in a
It runs on
vacuum. So
bananas.
there's nothing to really slow it down.
Perpetual, so it gets faster. That's right. So it should be like going light speed by now.
I think Paul's conceding that he's happy to accept Google Earth now in the chat.
What makes you think he's happy to accept Google
He's
Earth?
saying, say it again, Sam, 35 feet. So I think he's just going to go back onto accepting that we can just use... Maybe he doesn't like going to the Ordnance Survey maps for the targets and digging out the height that they're sat on. You know, maybe that's just too much work. So I think he's just going to go and concede that, yeah, it's just easier to use Google.
Who's he talking about when he says Sam? Is he on about me?
The monkeys go crazy. They sniff petrol, sure. Monkeys, they're high on petrol and just chilling, eating their bananas.
I think Paul sniffs petrol.
Well, I mean, you start reading books, you might want to sniff some petrol.
Who's a liar? Rory McFizz Flat Earth. It's easier when you put in names to stuff so that we know we were talking about.
Enjoy my new guest. How you doing, Blue Moon?
That's Lottie says. That's what I was going to say. Rory, it's your, not and liar, you mong. That's what I was going to do. But I wasn't sure if it was aimed at me or not, so I decided that I'd give him the benefit of the doubt.
Hi.
Hold on, we got some good comments from Lou. It says, at Nathan Oakley, do you seriously think Google Earth is accurate with elevation? I don't think Google Earth is accurate at all because we don't live on a globe. So yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Messed up.
Fortunately, we've got Paul around to tell us how bad it really is and how useless Google Earth actually is for doing anything like this. You know, it's just basically broken and useless and inaccurate. But thanks to Paul, we've had that demonstrated to the audience. So kudos.
I guess one thing that I want to talk about is this, like, this notion of accuracy, right? Because I think there's kind of a disconnect in what, you know, Nathan, you think is the meaning of accurate and what a scientist would say accurate means. It's like when you mean accurate, you have to put like a quantity to it. So for example,
no, that would be accurate to within. No, that would be accurate to within. So when they say accurate to within, the word accurate has a very specific meaning. But I'm not saying accurate to within. You are. I know what accurate means.
Okay.
Accurate to within means not accurate, but it is accurate to within a degree or so. It might be very close to accurate, but it is not actually accurate now, is it? Is it not accurate or is it accurate? Are you now going to fight with me and tell me that Google Earth is accurate? Or are you going to say that it's inaccurate? Or are you going to put on a caveat that it's accurate to within a margin of something?
I mean, it's always accurate to within some precision. Like, do you have instruments which can measure infinitely precise?
Right, so I haven't misunderstood the definition of accurate. You're just trying to add the caveat of to within, correct?
Right, because it's always...
Right, well, that's not what I said, though, is it? So I do understand the word accurate, correct?
Okay, I agree. You understand the word
that's
accurate.
Good. Let's just draw that to a close then, shall we? Before we argue about to within a, because I didn't say that.
Okay,
fair enough. How you doing, Pete?
Every single bottle you write
I think we've drawn a close to that conversation. I think I understand the meaning of the word accurate, and I think I'm pretty certain that Google is not within that description. Okay?
He's trying to have a conversation with you, Nathan.
Yeah, he's a conversation starting with you don't understand the meaning of the word accurate. Right, if you're gonna start your conversation with me telling I don't understand the meaning of a word, and then go on to tell me that the word I do understand, but you're going to add an extra caveat on, I'm just going to tell you to shut up.
Nathan.
Like it or lump
There's
it.
always a caveat. There's always a
For you,
caveat.
there's always a caveat, but the word accurate still has a very specific description, doesn't it?
Sure.
It means something.
But
it has a
when we're
meaning.
talking about a mathematical model describing the world, it's
inaccurate. It is not accurate, is it?
No model is accurate.
Hold on. So when Tim Osman states that we have 100% predictive capability of the stars and that it is perfect and accurate, is that an incorrect statement? Is Tim Osman false? Are we not accurate with the stars?
100%.
Hold on. Are we or are we not accurate with the stars?
We're not 100% to like infinite precision accurate.
But now you're being semantical over the word.
I know. That's precisely why I've shut him down.
No, you have to define an error to your measurement.
No, I don't.
You can't be 100% precise.
I haven't got to do anything. When I describe a word like accurate, it has a definition. Simple.
I'm not talking about a model. I'm just talking about doing an observation. No observation is infinitely precise.
But you get into the point where you're arguing like a position where it's becoming exponentially worse. It becomes exponentially ridiculous. So, yeah,
no, I mean you have to quantify how precise your measurement is. Otherwise, you don't know how accurate your model is because you don't know how precise or how close your model needs to get to reality.
I trust Google Earth more than Lewis Hackett because he read the 48 Laws of Power, which is all about manipulating people to achieve your social aims.
Thanks for that, P-Maz.
One time at band camp,
I shoved a flute up my pie hole.
Yep. Still waiting on those constellations to twist around or do something. Sort of just
Consistent
sitting
with
there,
the orbit of the sun. Yep, me too.
looking all cruxy and Southern Crossy, just being all, I've been here for hundreds of years and stuff. And it is kind of weird that the celestial poles don't really move so much, but the old sun, that'll do the old up and down for winter and summer.
So
Too far away, I guess. Light years. Just can't see the millimeters of movement.
So Rory McFizz Flat Earth. Nathan, you're a liar. I exposed you lots of times. I made videos. You're a muppet. How many grammatical mistakes are there in that sentence there? And he's been corrected on 2 of them already, and he's still done them. Your, Y-O-U-R, should be your Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. Liar, L-I-A-R, not L-I-E-R. Exposed. It's not, it's miles off. Lots of times, 1F. I made videos. You're a muppet. You're Y-O-U-R-E with an apostrophe in the middle, not Y-O-U-R. Come on, Rory McFizz Flat Earth.
I think I remember seeing you misspelling maintain on your email to Rumpus.
So I remember that time when the sun was like a certain distance away, and then it changed up a little bit, and like it sort of took a while to get that right. It's kind of weird.
Is that the email that Rumpus has not replied to after nearly 2 days? It's a 10-minute job, 15-minute job max. He's already got the maths. He hasn't. Is that the email that you mean?
Maintain.
Let's check.
Come on, Rumpus. Join and show us how wrong you are. We want to get it documented.
Yeah, I want him to state his position. Oh, happy days. Thanks, Mommy. Sent items to Rumpus. What was the word you said I misspelled?
We use Venus parallax, right, to get the distance of the sun or something, don't we? Should be pretty damn accurate.
Yeah.
How did we measure the Venus parallax?
Oh, just little left to righties. 190, 190.
When it went in front of the sun, I guess. That's supposedly what happened.
Say that again.
And
when Venus transited the sun, so kind of like how the moon eclipses the sun, but it was Venus. I mean, it didn't obviously eclipse the sun, but it went in front of the sun.
I know, but how did we get the distance to Venus? Because you need to have one common value to get everything else.
They use Kepler's, I forget which law it was, but by studying the planets, they noticed that there was a trend in the period of the orbits.
Yeah, I understand that.
At any stage, did they know the size of
Right.
any of the planets at
Right.
any
So
stage?
the period scales with the radius to like the 2/3 power, something like that. So you know that the Earth's orbit, well, you know, we define a year, whatever orbit you want to define it as. And then they used the time that it took to transit the sun, and then they used the angular size to deduce how long the period of Venus's orbit was.
But how do you calculate the angular size when you don't know the actual size or the distance?
1 degree, all right? It's 360.
Circular
It's simple
reasoning.
maths, Riley. Get it
Just
right.
circular reasoning.
You point
Because-
the thing, you get the degrees.
Let's
because
hear,
the angular
let's hear Philip
size-
go
1
through the
degree is
circular
like
reasoning.
possibly
Let's
a
hear him
certain
go
distance.
through it.
Could be a light year, could be 100 million light
Hold
years.
on,
You
mate,
don't know,
Fort.
but that degree
Because
is
angular
Hold on,
size
and
is
hold
it's
on,
related to
Fort,
mass.
hold on. Philip wants to go through his circular reasoning with us. Let him do it.
Okay.
Wait,
Come
so
on, mate.
how does how?
Work.
So you don't think that you can measure angular size without knowing the distance?
You need either the actual size or the distance to calculate the angular size. Measuring the angle is not getting the angular size.
Wait,
I know
But
about that.
how can you? How
the
can you?
pie.
So you're saying you can't measure the angle of a side of
Didn't
a triangle?
Geo go over this with you already, Anthony?
Yeah. It's circular reasoning. Nathan's correct. You cannot you cannot calculate the angular size.
I can make
by simply measuring the angle.
a smaller triangle, which is a similar triangle to the big triangle.
Yeah.
Something which is the size that is, that is measurable,
Yeah.
but
So we
shares
should
an
know
angle.
the exact
And-
diameters of the sun and every other planet just about
That's
by
the point.
now,
We
right?
don't have the diameters of the sun because to get the
we should,
diameter, you need to know
we
the
should know
distance.
everything.
Calculate.
No,
down
but you
to a
only need
degree.
one distance, and we know we can assume that there is some distance between the sun and the Earth, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What?
Right
You,
after
what
this,
wait, did we send a paper plane to it and measure it?
Right. I'll put it
What
simply.
happened?
You can't get the diameter of the sun, the moon, or any of the planets unless you know the distance. You can't get the
Well,
distance
it is.
unless you know the
It's
diameter.
a degree, right?
No, of course, I wasn't
300
arguing that you need the diameter of the sun. I was arguing that you need the angular size of the sun relative to the observer.
Yeah, that's the point relative to the observer. So how do you get the relative to the observer point? That's that second part.
These
No, because you
cows
measure
are
the angle by
small.
looking at the
These
difference between
cows
two
are far
straight lines,
away.
But you're not getting it from a
where they intersect at a point.
Mhm.
Right? Where two lines intersect at a point, there's an angle between them.
Correct.
They intersect at a point,
That's right.
right? And a point is local in space, right?
Yeah.
It's about a light year. 1 point.
So if
I mean,
I can measure the angle between two intersecting lines
Correct.
in the vicinity of where those two lines intersect.
Correct. How can
Okay.
you, from that measurement, how can you determine distance?
No. Okay. That's a different thing. So I'm
No,
just,
that's angular size.
just going on to say that you can measure the angular size of an object.
No.
Angular
You can
size
measure the
meaning-
angle.
Yes, measure the angle. That's what I mean by angular
So
size.
how do you then calculate the angular size if you got if you have the measured angle? What
No. The angular size and the angle are the same thing.
No, they're not.
The angular size.
The angular
It's the same.
size, and I know that they're going to hate me for saying this, but it's a sum. It's you have to use an equation to calculate the angular size. Measuring the angle gives you one of the two elements. You need another element to calculate the angular size. It's not merely It's not merely measuring the angle. There is a second part to it
What is the second part?
from the observer's position. You said it yourself. In other words, the distance.
There's a point where the observer is, where the two lines intersect.
That's right.
Okay,
So that
that's
point you need to know to calculate the angular size. Otherwise, all you've done is measured the angle. That is not
No,
because angular size is a sum. It's not simply a measurement.
What's a
no,
sum?
I'm saying the angular size is the same as the angle.
It's not. Angular size is
and
a
it
sum.
doesn't matter any way that you go around
Angular-
it, whether you say triangle, square, this, that, upside down, left, right, inside out. Like you can't get
All right.
any.
So I'm not going to call it angular size. I'm just going to call it the angle of the sun. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, the angle of the sun I'm fine with. But when you
Okay,
say
fine.
angular size, I
Sure.
ask you, how do you know the distance, or how do you know the diameter?
Well, if I knew the distance, I wouldn't call it angular size. I'd just call it the size.
No, if you knew the distance, you could call it the angular size.
We're
No,
just
if I
talking
knew the
about words
distance,
now.
I would
Fact
call it
is
the size
that
of
we
the
can't
object.
If
get
you knew the
any of it,
distance,
no
you could
matter what.
calculate the diameter accurately.
That means I
So-
would know its
so when a
size.
plane goes
Correct.
across the
So if
sky.
I knew the
it-
distance to the
travel
object
light
and I knew the
years.
angle of the object, I wouldn't know its angular size. I would know its size.
Sorry, Make 4 spoke over you then. Just say that last line again.
So I said if I knew the angle of the object and I knew the distance to the object, I wouldn't say that I know the angular size. I would say I know the size,
Correct.
the actual size.
Correct.
So-
But that word at the beginning, if, is a big word, because I assert that you don't know the distance, so you cannot work out the diameter. If you
But I
didn't-
don't need to know the distance. All I need to know is the angle.
No, that's not
No,
true.
you don't.
Measuring the angle does not give you angular size.
This cow is
All
close.
right, I don't care
This
about what you
cow
call
is
it.
small.
All I need to know
This
is the
cow
angle.
is
That's all I
far
need to
away.
know. You can call angular size, not angular size. It doesn't matter.
With all due respect, that's not correct. The angular size requires two components to the equation.
I
Measuring
don't need
angle,
the angular size. I just need the angle.
You need the angle and either the actual size or the distance. Agreed?
No. For this measurement, you need the angle.
Okay.
That's all you need.
So, okay,
you
let me
wanna
give
put
you
it
an
up?
example, please, Philip. So, I go and get
I'll have
a
to work
model
it out,
made.
but
I go and get a
yes.
model made of a cow, and it's perfect, absolutely perfect, indistinguishable scale model of a cow, modelled on a real cow. And then I set it up so that in your field of view, it is exactly the same, what you are calling angular size, as the same full-size cow at a further distance. They appear the same size.
Sure.
Right, so how do you determine which one is a cow and which one is a tiny model of a cow based on just looking at it?
You have to look at what happens when something goes between you and the cow.
Right, so you're saying parallax.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And then
And then you have to use some other information, like, for example, Kepler's law, or some other information about the object which is going in front of you.
All the parallax can tell you is which is the
then-
closer of the two.
It's not the parallax. It's you have to actually use physical laws to figure this out. Kepler's law, which was observed by Kepler back God knows when.
Okay, so are you changing your position now? Because you were originally saying that angular size is simply the measurement of the angle, but now you're diversifying into a different realm. Are you still of the kilter that angular size is the measurement, or are you going to make a different point now? Okay, let me ask it a different way. Can we get a definition of what the angular size is? Can you show us one?
Okay, so the angular size is, so you have a triangle, right? And this is in your field of view, the model cow that Nathan was talking about, right? The angular size is what you measure between putting, let's say, like your crosshair which is in the center of your camera view on one side of the cow, and then measuring the position, right? Or like in the case of your Isle of Man example. So if you could somehow measure the angle between one side of the Isle of Man and the other, then that would be the angle.
Yeah. But how do you calculate? How do you get?
You don't
the
need to
angular size
calculate it.
of
It's a
the sun?
measurement.
How do you get the angular size of the sun?
So you do the same thing for the sun. You put a solar filter on, and then you line up the bottom of this crosshair thing from the bottom of the sun, and then you move it to the top, and then you measure the angular change in whatever altitude or however you want to do that.
degrees.
And if you did that, would it come out to a different measurement for the moon?
Degrees, bro. You give him
I
degrees.
actually have to do it, but I imagine it's
and
very
you know
similar.
stuff.
Very similar, or exactly
Yeah.
the same?
I don't know.
It's exactly
it's
the
a
same.
measurement,
I can
you
tell
have to
you
do
now,
it.
it's exactly the same. So based on what you've just explained, gives you the size of the sun. We have exactly the same process, giving us exactly the same size for the moon.
No,
That
you
tiny
have to
little
do other things. I
Oh,
was
so
just
hold
talking
on.
about
No, no, no.
measuring the
You're just
angle.
about to say,
yeah.
no, we do other things. That's what you've just detailed. And I've just pointed out the fundamental flaw. And now you're saying, well, we do other things. Here we go. Circular reasoning. We'll go round and round
No,
and
it's
round
not
forever
circular
until you
reasoning.
accept that you don't have a distance to these
where does Kepler's
objects
law come in
or
there?
the size of these objects. You don't have
does Kepler's
either.
law come
You
in
don't
there?
have them.
To
You
measure.
just extrapolate them, and it's circular
Where does
reasoning.
Kepler's law come into your logic? It doesn't. See, there's an extra thing that you have to do to get the distance to the sun.
Okay. It's not just crosshairs left to right,
I'm
one
just talking
little
about
acute angle.
the angle. I'm just talking about the angle part of the measurement. There's other stuff that you have to do.
Okay.
Anyways,
What
I
do we
have
do
to
then,
go.
bro? Quick. Oh,
You
you
joined
gotta go.
by
You can't
Curved
teach us all
Water?
about Kepler's law.
How you doing,
freak.
Curved? Return after sickness. Good to have you back.
Hanging in. Got a question for you, Nathan. You made a statement that they're exactly the same angular size, sun and moon. Correct?
That's as I understand it. Feel free to correct me, Curved.
The question is, how do we get a big
I'm
ring
wondering
around?
what you're using, as your source to make that statement. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, bruh. It just
The
bloody.
sun is like what, 10 times bigger than the moon, but it's 10 times further away, or is it 100?
What?
Dude, that's
um,
way off, surely.
That hurt, P. That really hurt. I'd rather talk to Nathan about this if you don't mind, because he's much closer to the actual facts on this, although he is off. On what basis do you make that statement, Nathan, that they're exactly the same? To what degree of precision and accuracy are you claiming this?
Well, do you feel free to challenge it and tell me where I'm wrong, Curved?
No, I'm asking, Nathan.
I'm just
You made a
asserting it off the
statement.
top
I'm
of my
wondering
head, Curved.
what
I've just made it up off the top of my head, Curved. Maybe you can challenge it in some way.
Well, I'm wondering if if you're just going on what you've heard and this is your understanding, or do you have a source that you've
Are
actually
you deaf? Are you deaf,
read
Curved?
that
Did you not hear
says,
what I
yes,
just
they're
said?
exactly the same
Are you
size?
deaf?
That's all I'm asking.
Do you have a hearing problem? I'm just asserting it randomly. Now feel free
They're the
to
same.
challenge it in some way.
The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, and the moon is 400 times closer. So they're the same.
Approximately. You guys have to understand that these values do vary. The moon, the angular size of the moon varies throughout the month, not just the year, but throughout the month. The sun, angular size of the sun varies throughout the year. It's not much, but the smallest that the moon appears is smaller than the sun will ever appear, and the largest that the moon appears is larger than the sun will ever appear to an observer on the earth.
Do you have any evidence of that?
These are not huge distances.
Just making an assertion.
Well,
Can you
about-
prove that in any
well,
way,
let's-
shape, or form? It just sounds like you're just making it up.
No, I'll go ahead and even up with you here. It's just an assertion that I just made up off the top of my head, Nathan.
Cool. We can all
Now,
make
now
assertions.
I'm on even ground with you, Nathan.
Yeah, man, we can all make assertions, Curved. Easy.
Would you care to actually win, to produce something to put you over the edge? Or are you just going to wait for me to show that what you asserted and pulled off the top of your head is incorrect?
I'll wait for you to just disprove it.
I knew that would happen.
Go ahead.
Is it worth asking Curved where he's been for the last 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
I've not seen you for at least
That's
2
my
weeks.
life.
You sniped me within the last 2 weeks, faggot.
That hangout was offline. He didn't make it
Lying
online.
bitch.
Where have you been, Curved? I've been missing you.
Well,
I've
keep
missed you,
missing
Curved.
me.
I won't lie. I have missed you.
Yeah, I've missed him as well. He makes me laugh. So, Curve, do you have a position with regards to where the lighthouse should be, the point of a lighthouse on the composite, or is it one that you're swerving?
It should be up your ass.
So that seems reasonable.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so
I
would
think
you agree?
agree?
Would you agree with Miles
You would
Davis's
like to
position
find
that
out
it's off the
where you're at.
page? Would you
What?
agree with? Would you agree with Miles Davis's position that it's off the page?
I haven't seen enough of it to know.
Fair enough. Wise move. Don't look any further, because if you do, I'll be asking you for your position, because I want to know where you are. I'd like to see where you stand yourself with these morons.
I'm right in the bullseye of correct. That's where I am.
Okay.
Now, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I've got some research to do because Nathan has this burning desire to know the truth, and I'm going to try to help him out.
You're really kind. I really appreciate it.
I got to pull up some references here for him so that he understands.
Is that backup channel in chat? The backup channel, is that Lewis?
Yes.
I thought you were rage quitting and never coming back, Lewis. Nice to see you.
I like the people who say boycott this channel and then
Yeah.
come into the chat and then come on the show. It's like Rory McFizz. It's like, Rory, you say you've made videos. I haven't seen it, mate. I'm sorry. I don't watch your crap. But you're here watching mine. Thanks for your support.
It's like when it's like when Channel Q. It's like when Channel Q said, "Right, I'm unsubbing," and she was back on 3 days later. It's like Lewis says, "I'm not coming back. I'm rage quitting. I'm leaving. Bye. You're all a bunch of morons." 4 days goes by. 3 days goes by. Hi, Lewis. Yeah, hi.
It's really dishonest of Lewis.
Yeah, it's really dishonest, Lewis. You need to have courage in your conviction. You need to stay away. Oh, and Curve, just for the record, I apologize for sniping you on the other hangout. I rage quit. It was wrong of me to snipe you. I shouldn't have sniped you. But it did feel good. Mark Taylor says, Barley's been sniping for weeks. Got any evidence of that, Mark?
How you doing,
I'd
Lottie?
tell you if I
Good
was
to have you.
sniping for weeks.
Been joined by Lottie.
I think
You hear
that's
us?
the biggest hole in the
Hold on, P.
heliocentric
Hold on.
model.
Can you hear us, Lottie?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, we hear you. Perfect.
Can you
Good to
hear
have
me?
you.
Good stuff.
Where have you been, Lottie? You've missed work.
Just here to moderate between Sleeping Warrior and Curved Water. We don't want any fighting today.
Mark Taylor says, Riley, yes, I called you out last week for sniping. Mark, I have admitted the sniping that I've done. I've not admitted the sniping that I haven't done. If I snipe somebody, I'll tell you. Why? Because ball earthers think that sniping is acceptable and they encourage it by allowing people like PMARS to be on the chat and never call them out on it. So sniping is encouraged by the ball earthers, by they turn a blind eye to people like PMARS.
Any
Do you have
evidence?
any evidence? Do you
I
have
was
any
just about to say the
evidence
same
on the
thing. You got any
sniper?
evidence the PMARS has sniped anybody ever?
PMARS has self-admitted it. He's admitted he sniped loads of people, and he
No,
claims
I
he doesn't snipe
haven't.
everybody. So is it false then, PMARS, that you've admitted that you've sniped people in the past?
Not loads of people. Like
So
a
how many would you say, PMARS? Is it
like
5?
two or three maybe?
2 or 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't snipe. I like to argue.
Well, you don't really argue that much. You keep quiet.
I think
really
you and
see
P
you
are on
getting
the same
involved in
playing
it.
field. I think both you and P, when and if you've sniped people, you've just immediately admitted it.
Yeah, I don't really
I sniped 4
I got
people in
this
the last.
reputation because of people like you, Riley, that just assert things without evidence.
I completely agree. PMARS has got a bad reputation and it's undeserved. Yes, he has sniped people, and because he's just admitted it, people then tar him with the brush that, unfortunately, Anthony, you may very well get tarred with too now.
That's okay. But I admit to when I snipe people, and I have no problem admitting that I sniped Curved, Paul Voigt, Gem Panda, and one other person. I can't remember who it was. But that's it. I have sniped one other person in the whole history of Nathan's show because he was generally being a doofus. But that's fine. I mean, I'm all right with that. If that makes me a sniper, then so be it. But I actually see it as moderating. I know it's not my show, and I shouldn't be
You're not
doing it.
moderating here, though, knucklehead.
I know.
Moderate.
I know.
You
I
can
understand. I understand. I'm not a moderator. I understand. However, there are times when moderating should be done for the benefit of everybody else. Because if there's a contentious discussion that we're all talking about, because people disagree on it, and somebody's literally derailing the whole conversation by going, for example, but not limited to, What benefit of to anybody on either side of the discussion is that? Come on.
But Baz has got it right. He says Nathan allows it though, and I do, and I absolutely want it. When people do that, I don't want people to mute them and snipe them, and I want it to be seen. You know, that kind of distraction, I want it acknowledged and documented, because that's what we deal with. That's what I've dealt with the last 2.5 years. And normally, if it's me in a Globehead hangout, I'll get turned right down and repeatedly muted by the other people on the panel. And it's frustrating. And I've heard Globehead say the exact same thing about going on, and I won't mention any names, but on Flat Earth Hangouts, they get turned right down, they get muted, then eventually they get kicked. Or in this case, it's sniping. It's not, it's not the host doing it. I don't want to kick anybody ever.
All right. Well, I've got something here, but I have to check with you first, Nathan, because this is be acceptable, or do you need this information to come directly from an ordnance survey map?
I don't know what you're presenting yet, so no need for any caveats. Just, do you want to present?
I will share this and get to the relevant information here very quickly. Let's see. I'm going to try to expand it a little bit. That's too much. Is this legible for you?
Yeah, you're presenting. Looks good.
Okay. Now here for the sun, we've got the angular diameter as 31 minutes, 31 seconds to 32 minutes, 33 seconds. That's the variation in the angular size of the moon due to the elliptical orbit, the eccentricity of the orbit. Now,
could I ask a question?
Which varies our distance.
Hold on, just wait.
And
just let him present it. He's just gone away and found it. Let him present it.
What's that?
I was just saying to Riley, don't interrupt. Just let Curved present what he's found.
And then, let's just take a second. And then the moon, see, the smallest it appears is 29 minutes, 20 seconds to 34 minutes and 6 seconds. There's a much broader variation here, greater variation in the moon than the sun. They are not the same angular diameter or angular size, whichever you prefer. They angular size varies because that is determined by the distance and the actual size of the object you're viewing, as Riley is well aware.
Where's this come from? What's their source of this information? I'm not contesting it and saying it's incorrect, but I'd like to know how they have established this. Thank you for finding it. I stand corrected, it seems.
Measurements. I've seen it somewhere else, and I wasn't able to come across it again yet. But I mean, this is just wiki, and I'm not sure exactly what they're citing as the source for this table. But it's recordings of, I mean, all kinds of celestial bodies.
You couldn't really tell the difference with the naked eye, though.
No, I'm sure you couldn't. No, I don't dispute that, P.
I'm not saying you can. I mean, five arc minutes difference in the size of the. Although, I mean, Anthony, haven't you claimed that the harvest moon is 8 to 10 times the size of a regular moon?
Sure.
But you did, right? You did claim that, and then even after the fact, you stood by it.
And I still stand by it.
Well, then I'm not even sure why you're here.
That's ridiculous, right?
Okay, it's ridiculous. I still stand by it.
It's humorous.
Yeah, it may be humorous, but if I get a clear enough day, I'll do it. But listen, keep that page on. Let me know when no. Go back to that page.
Thank you, Curved. I stand corrected. I will eat humble pie.
What was you? Whilst Curved's putting it back on, what were you corrected over?
I insisted that they were absolutely identical, and clearly they're not, even if it's a tiny measurement. I mean, I'm going to accept what he's presented on face value without even looking into it, but, I'm still prepared to say, yeah, seems like I'm wrong. Fair enough.
Yeah, but actually, Nathan, if you actually look at
the moon changes size by 1.5% from, like, the horizon to where it is.
Nath, if you actually look at the values of the sun and the moon's angular diameter or angular size, you can see that the sun ranges between 31 and 32, and the moon ranges from 29 to 34. So for half of its size, the moon and the sun are the same.
They're pretty much the same, dude. They're
Yeah, but that's not the same.
roughly-
I can't sit here after jumping down Philip's throat about accurate and then concede that they're the same. They're not.
Curved.
It's not identical, but close.
Well, they are the same for a period, aren't they? They do pass the point where they are the same.
Well, there's nothing to suggest that they are the same at the same time. They do share common angular diameters, and it's not only the midpoint.
So you don't agree that the value of the sun is from between 31 arc minutes to 32 arc minutes, when in comparison and contrasting, the moon is 29 arc minutes to 34 arc minutes. You don't accept that whilst they are fluctuating ever so slightly in their size, that they will cross and become the same size. You don't believe that to be true?
Not at the same time.
Right. It's an impossibility that they would never interchange.
Yeah, they
perfectly
must
at the
cross
same
at
time.
some point, Curved. You must concede this, surely.
Whoa, no, because that would require that they are at the right distance at the same time for their angular sizes to cross. No?
No. The sun is ranging from 31 arc minutes to 32 arc minutes. The moon is ranging from 29 arc minutes to 34. The apparent size or the angular size of the sun fits within the size of the moon's minimum and maximum values. Therefore, there are periods where the sun and the moon are the exact same size by your own measurement.
A short time as it's changing.
Well,
it's got to cross.
I'd say it would be more than a short time, because it was anywhere between 29 and 34. It can interchange with the sun's at 31 to 32. So as the moon fluctuates and the sun fluctuates,
how does it give you time? How do you judge how long they're the same size as it's crossing, going from large to smaller to
you'd have to look
larger?
at patterns, wouldn't you? You'd have to look at how long it was at different sizes for and how often they overlapped. But they would overlap because they are the same angular size at various different points in time. Because it shows the range that they fluctuate between, and the sun fits within the range of the moons all the time. Curved.
But it's constantly fluctuating, slightly, ever so slightly. I mean,
and you know what it probably
eventually
is that's causing it to fluctuate the most? Refraction.
No, that's actually not the case.
I would assert that it is, because it appears to be consistent with a minuscule variation.
I'm going to stop sharing now. Is that okay?
No. Wait. See at the top of that column, it says angular diameter or size. Could you show me in the article how that's defined? Because I'm a bit thick. I'd like to know what it means when it says angular diameter or size. So if you go back to the top, and
does refraction change the size of things?
Yeah,
I'd have to see evidence. I'd have to see evidence of that.
Let me come back to P. Mars's question in a sec. But could you show me what that angular diameter is defined as within this article?
Sure. Within the article, here's one example.
Right. See how it says
angular diameter, the angle subtended by an object.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. See here's one vertex of the angle. Here's the second. Here's the third.
Yeah.
Now, the angular size of the sun here is the same angular size as the angle at this part. Any object right here, this distance from the observer that fits in here, has an angular diameter of 32 arc minutes or 1920 arc seconds or half degree.
But in this instance,
an object here would be the same. An object here would be the same. But angular size is the angle subtended by the object.
Okay. So on this instance, you've got the actual diameter. Correct?
They show this as the actual diameter of the sun.
So if you have the actual diameter, you can then calculate using the sum, you can get the distance. But if you don't have the actual...
And if you have two ice creams, you don't have any ice cream. But we're not playing that game right now.
No, he's not playing. He's not playing game.
Hey,
he's not giving any presuppositional arguments
I've
here.
been through this way too long.
That's not what he's doing,
Riley.
Curved. But that's not what he's doing.
Game here.
Let's
not
go
what
back
he's
to
doing.
the
The
definition
angular
curve.
diameter is the same here as it is here, as it is here, as it is here. The
So
fact
again,
that they're showing the actual diameter of the sun is irrelevant. The actual diameter is not going to be in arc minutes or arc seconds or degrees. The actual diameter will be measured in things like inches, feet, miles, kilometers.
I'm gonna make an assertion, and I want you to prove me wrong. I'm gonna
No,
assert.
that's not how reality works, Riley. If you're going to make an assertion, then why don't you provide evidence that your assertion
I'm
is
trying.
true? This
Swerving
is not a game.
You're swerving from where I want you to go.
No,
I
you
want you
are.
to show what the definition of the angular
I'm not going to
diameter
go
is.
want me to go just because you want me to go. You do understand that.
I'm asking you to show me what the angular diameter in that
He's
column is
showing
defined
it
as in this
on the
article.
screen.
I'm trying to hear him, P.
Go to the top of the article, Curved, and read what it says for the angular diameter.
To the top?
Sure. There we go. Just read that first line there.
The angular diameter, angular size, apparent diameter, or apparent size. Notice the use of the term apparent here as well. It does not mean it does not have a real size, Riley.
Read, carry on. Is what?
You mute your watch, please, new
Somebody's
guest.
feeding back.
Mute your
terribly.
watch page, new guest.
All right, is the problem solved now?
Yep.
Okay.
Possibly he needs to do a mic check though, doesn't he?
Well, we can wait. Curve's in the middle of something.
All right.
Okay,
So apparent
here's
size
So
is an angular. You want me to read or no? I'm lost.
we've got to the point where you're at is. So an apparent size is.
Is an angular measurement describing how large a sphere or circle appears from a given point of view.
There you go. From a given point of view. It's not any point of view, is it? It's from a given.
If you vary your point of view and you vary your distance to the object, you're going to vary the apparent size of the object by going to the new location. Yes.
I agree, but to satisfy the
The
definition, it
angular
needs to be from
size
a
is
given.
the angle subtended from where you're taking the measurement.
Indeed, from
This-
a given.
This is so simple a flat earther could understand it, Riley.
So again, I asked the question, with regards to the sun or the moon, how do you know what your given position is? Because you haven't got the distance to measure. So how do you know?
Oh, you think the position needs to be given to you by somebody?
You need to have a given distance. You can't have any.
No, it's from the distance where you're making the measurement.
Yes. So what is that distance to the sun?
Wherever you are.
Well, but what is it? How do you know?
Well, you're not measuring the distance to the sun when you're taking a measurement of angular size.
But you must.
Size is irrelevant. No, you're going to try to play this, and it's embarrassingly pathetic, Riley.
No,
I
no,
don't know why you
Curved.
persist.
There are two parts to the equation. There's
No.
two parts of the sentence.
No,
There is a measurement.
Riley, come on.
There is a
The
measurement.
angular diameter, the angle subtended by an object. That's
Yeah,
it.
but
That's
oversimplified.
game over.
But Curved, in that one, you're showing that you've got the actual diameter. And if you have the
doesn't
actual
matter.
diameter, you then
You
can
don't
have
need
the
the
angular
actual
size.
diameter.
Curved, if you have the actual size, you
But they're
have
not,
the angular size.
Riley,
You
they're
need
not
one
using
or the other.
the actual diameter to measure the angular size.
Curved, there's a second part to the sentence. I accept that there's an angular measurement, but the second part says from a given point, not from any. It's from a.
And what is your
You need to know
point
what
there?
your point is.
What is your semantical argument there?
That you need to know what your point is. So to calculate the angular size, you need the measured angle, and you need to know your distance curved.
That's false.
Can you have him
That's
prove
false.
that? Make Riley prove that.
The proof is there. He's got the proof on screen. It says from a given
the screen.
point of
His
view.
screen says the opposite of what yours. His screen doesn't require the actual diameter to measure the angular diameter. So why don't you prove what you're asserting, Riley?
Do you understand what I'm asserting, PMARS? Because it appears that you don't.
Yeah, I do. You're asserting that he needs the actual diameter to determine the angular diameter, correct?
No, I'm saying if he has the actual size, When he scrolls down and you should look at the diagram that he presented, in that diagram he has the actual size, but we don't have the actual size of the sun.
I'm going to read something else here to you, reading on in that what
The
your
diagram.
definition. It says the angular diameter can alternatively be thought of as the angle through which an eye or camera must rotate to look from one side of an apparent circle to the opposite side. Do you follow that? Do you understand what that means? Did you hear what Philip said earlier about when you take the instrument and you line up the crosshairs like at the bottom of the sun and then move the crosshairs to the top of the sun and measure the angular change? You know,
okay, I agree.
That will give you an angle.
I'd like
That
to know
will give you an angle, and that angle is the angular size of the object. That
Okay.
angular size will vary based upon the point that you're taking the observation measurement from, because if you change the distance, you will change the angular size because the actual size has not changed.
Curved.
Angular size is the relationship of the distance to the actual size. But you
Curved.
don't need to know either one of those in order to take that measurement.
Curved.
And that's that.
If you look at that sentence, the angular diameter can alternatively be thought of as the angle through which the eye or camera must rotate to look from one side of an apparent circle to the opposite side. When you have that, and I've not seen that before, however, it's there, so we'll go with it. That now does negate the importance of having a given point of view. I agree. The problem is it contradicts the first sentence, so it now becomes confusing. Because the first sentence,
only to you.
No.
Because
it doesn't. It's not contradictory, dude.
It is.
You
Because
just,
the first sentence has.
I think you're bad at English, Riley. Because first of all, you're arguing like given is different than any, but given in that context is completely synonymous with any.
All right,
Sorry to do this, guys. I've been waiting a while, so I just wanted. Sorry, Curved. I just want to introduce a couple of new guests. So we've been joined first of all by Truth Hammer. Can you hear us, Truth Hammer? You're on mute at the moment. If you could just say a quick hello, that'd be brilliant. Hello, Truth Hammer.
Yeah, hello.
Very good to have you here. We've also been joined by Chris. How you doing, Chris?
All right, Nathan. How you doing?
Very well. Good to have you.
Thank you.
That guy speaking there, Chris, is that
Yeah, it's me, Anthony.
Are you the guy that lives in Scotland that did a 2-hour hangout recently?
I didn't host a hangout, no.
I'm just trying to. What's your screen name?
Chris MCM. Chris 1982 in Roman numerals.
No, I don't think you're the same guy I'm thinking of. I'm just trying
Probably
to.
Not.
You don't live on
did
the.
a hangout recently.
Who did?
I just spoke to you with half a dozen times.
I know. I'm just trying to think. Are you the same guy that I was watching a hangout of recently? Who did
I'll
you say,
remember
Kurt?
his name in a minute, but we've been joined by Huey. How you doing, Huey?
Hello, Nathan. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you. While we've got you with your mic open, Huey, there's a question that you've asked several times about parabolic flight, which I'd quite like you to voice to the hangout.
Sorry?
In the chat, you asked the same question a couple of times about free fall and parabolic flight.
Yeah.
Could you verbally ask it if you wouldn't mind?
There's a noise. It keeps screeching over you. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to repeat your question again, Nathan.
Sorry, that's my. I don't know why you've got
Maybe
a
we
screechy
should
noise. I
solve
can
the
hear it too
noise
now.
first.
My question was from the chat. You said a couple of times about parabolic manoeuvres. And
Parabolic flight, yeah.
Yeah, if you could just ask your question verbally, that was all I was hoping you would do.
Okay. Well, my question is, if we're held to the ground because we're denser than air, then how come humans can float in parabolic flight?
Is that aimed at me?
Anyone,
I think. I don't mind answering if no one else does, but I was hoping someone on the panel would.
That made the claim that it's because of density. The reason that we don't float away is because we're denser than air, right?
Yeah.
But in parabolic flight, denser than air humans float.
Well, it isn't actually floating, is it? By its true definition.
Yeah, you're not being pinned to the floor.
Yeah, correct. But the rate of velocity of the downward travel, the human falling through the air, is matched by the velocity of the plane that's falling out the sky.
Okay, so therefore there's something else involved. It's not just density, is it? What's causing that?
No, well, what happens if you remove the floor from your feet? You fall, right? You go down. So if you fall in a plane, then all that's happened is the velocity of the plane falling out of the sky is equal to the velocity of the human that's falling through unrestricted.
Why do you fall if the floor's removed?
Like I said, you're denser than the air that you're in, the environment that you're in. It's relative density.
Yeah, but it can't be just density. There must be something else involved. Something's
No,
causing
the
you
plane, Huey, is more dense than the air. The fact that the people inside that plane are moving relatively with that plane, which is falling, means that the plane is more dense than the air. But it has a closed system within that dense object falling.
Right. The enclosed system is pressurized, so it's an atmosphere. So the same thing applies as if you're on the ground, yet you're floating. So there's something else.
You're not. You're falling with the plane.
Yeah. Relative to the atmosphere inside the plane, you're floating. So there must be something else more than density involved.
But relative to the atmosphere that you create inside the plane, you are still heavier than the atmosphere that you create, so you will still fall. But if you move the floor away from you inside the plane, in other words, move the plane down, you're still relative to the atmosphere that you've created for yourself, you're still denser than it.
Why don't you float when you take off? Why don't you float when you're just flying normally then? What changes?
Well, you feel yourself pinned in the seat.
Yeah.
Why?
So what you're saying would necessitate that we wouldn't feel any feeling of acceleration.
How retarded this sounds.
It's ridiculous. You're suggesting that we wouldn't feel an acceleration force when taking off, and of course we do.
Hang on.
No, not just when taking off. When flying normally, and you can get up out your seat and you can go for a walk, or go to the bathroom, get a drink, whatever.
Been joined by Scott Veach. Hold on 1 second, just to introduce. There's a few people on the panel, so it'll take me a while to get it in. I'll just get it in straight away. How are you doing?
Me? I'm good.
You're a bit quiet. I'll turn you up.
If I could just the reason I logged on was to try and clarify something. Riley, do you know what apparent size means?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. What do you think that means? Apparent size.
It's like the apparent radius on the Metabunk curve. It's something they apparently see. It appears.
Can you define it with
size.
The word
apparent? Yeah, it's devoid of evidence to prove its certainty. It's apparent. It's the way you perceive something.
It's how big something looks. Would you agree with that?
Apparently, you've got a blue face.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So it's the way something looks, or how big something looks, right?
Sure.
Okay. So how about this? How about when we're talking to you, we don't use the word angular size, we call it apparent size. In other words, how big something looks. Yeah, does that solve your problem? Because you seem that would avoid confusion, I think.
I think the Wikipedia page now confuses the matter. On the one hand, it says that you don't need a fixed distance, and then on the
no. I'm asking you a question. If I were to say the apparent size of the moon is, or the apparent size of the sun is, are you okay with that? I'm just telling you how big it appears to look.
Well, the angular diameter, angular size,
all that. I'm just, if I were to say to you, the apparent size of the moon is, in other words, that's how big it looks.
Well, by this Wikipedia citation, apparent size and angular size are the same thing. So no, I would not.
Okay, so I hope you're all enjoying this debate thus far. We have approximately 10 minutes left on this broadcast. If you are new to the channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you are enjoying these live streams and would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside the show while it is live. But most importantly, if you would like to join the debate, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click on the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules in the Hangout. Number 1, please do not swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please do not try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back in the next video. With that, I'm going to transition back to the action. As I say, there is about 10 minutes left on this broadcast.
So how could I be getting this wrong from a given point of view? How can I get this wrong from a given point of view?
Okay, well, if you're at location A
Yeah, you're at a given point.
A, then you're at that point, and it's going to have an apparent size of X.
Agreed.
If you're over at point C, that
It's
could
still a
change the
given point of view.
distance, which could change your apparent size from C.
Yeah, but you can't have A and
It's
C
from
as
where
equal.
you are. You have
can't
to
have A and
measure it
C
from
as
where
equal.
you are. You
That's
can't
exactly.
measure it from where you're
You just
not.
said it. You have to measure. You've just said it. You have to measure from where you are. However, in
Right.
contrast, the
Nobody
next sentence,
disagrees with that. I mean,
You
why
do,
on
because
earth?
you say it's from anywhere curved. You use this citation and said that you could have it anywhere, and I don't
Okay,
agree.
you're misinterpreting that. I'm glad you brought that up. The observer does not change in my example there.
Correct.
The
So it's
little
from a
stick man does not move. I'm telling you that every object between the observer and the sun indicated in that image, in that graphic right there, every object that goes from, side to side of the triangle like that, like the arrows,
Yeah.
or, it says angular diameter and it's got the line pointing to those arrows.
Yeah.
That has the same angular size, same apparent size as the sun out there at the end, and everywhere in between.
Yeah, but Kev, you're missing the key point.
The size of it is going from side to side of the triangle, that is that angular size. That is something that
you're misunderstanding what it's.
I don't think you're listening to what he's saying, actually, Anthony.
I am. And
no, you're really not.
He's clearly misunderstanding. He's clearly misunderstanding.
No, you're
clearly not listening.
You are.
No, I'm listening, and I've realised
You've
where
got your own wee
wrong.
idea of what you think it is.
No, he's misunderstanding because
Just like everything else.
The minute he has the actual diameter, it fixes that point anywhere from being anywhere along here to a specific point because he has the actual diameter. It's not rocket science.
The actual diameter is not even known or
anywhere
used
along
in
here.
this.
Because if he doesn't change
the angle, Anthony, why are you so stubborn on?
Wait, Curved is saying because he doesn't change his position that anywhere along here the angular diameter is the same. It isn't.
Not. Hold on. Not of that object.
So it can only be the same in this one position, correct?
Yes, if it's closer, the angular diameter will change.
But in this instance, you have the actual diameter curve.
Riley, I said an object that goes from line to line, from side to side, like the arrows, at any distance. If the object is farther away, you will. Oh, you took it off now. You don't want people to see. Okay, I see. Great.
Well, I don't understand what it doesn't.
We were getting somewhere. He was just about to get it.
Yeah, that might be a bit optimistic.
Yeah, I think
so. Did I guess I sniped myself, did I?
You were sniped?
Where are you?
I was sniped, yeah.
Oh, you're on Skype already?
Yeah.
That was rapid.
Yeah, it's the defense. It's the defense technique that we have to adopt, isn't it?
Defense.
When people Nathan, can you just check in the background?
You're under siege.
I can't even see now because I was out of it. But in any event, as the angular size, if you have the actual diameter, it fixes it into a set position, and the observer doesn't change his position. But with the sun, we don't have an actual diameter.
Around in this example.
Hang on.
All right, go.
Riley, do you have a preferred word to use other than angular size or apparent size to mean how big something looks?
How you doing, Ranty? Good to have you here.
What would you like to call that? Hello, Ranty.
The measured angle.
All right. So if we called it measured angle instead of apparent size or angular size, would you be satisfied with that?
Sure.
Okay. So may I urge everybody to use the word measured angle when you're talking to Riley? Otherwise, he gets confused when you use apparent size or angular size.
No, because if you use angular size, I'm going to ask you what was your distance.
You just said you would be satisfied if we use, what was it?
The measured angle.
Measured angle.
Measured size.
Yeah. So then I would ask you, how do you know the distance to the sun?
It doesn't matter.
That's irrelevant.
How big something looks.
What do you not get about this?
So we say measured size.
Right. Let me ask.
And you're happy.
Why is
you're happy with that? You're happy with that? If we say measured size instead of angular size or apparent size, then we're done, right?
if you measure the angle, you don't get the distance to the sun. That's my
Are
point.
you happy with that?
So when
We're
I
not
asked
saying
Lewis,
you
how
do.
does he know the distance
No
to the
one's
sun?
saying that,
right?
Lewis
Measured
sat back
size.
and
There
smiled.
we go. We're done. Then
So
we're
I'll
done.
ask you,
Measured size.
Huey.
When you
Yeah,
want to
but
say
that's not
measured
right. No,
size-
that's not right. You can't call it measured size because that is to actually measure the thing. The word apparent implies that there is a given vantage point upon which you are, determining the angular. It's subjective. It's based upon where the person's standing. That's why it's called apparent. It's not the actual size.
But bring that up with Riley. Actual. No one is saying apparent size is actual size.
Let's call it measured size, then Riley won't get confused. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to help.
But
That's
he
all I'm
still
trying to
will.
do.
But by doing that and helping me not get confused, doesn't tell me how you know the distance to the sun. Huey,
one's
how do you
saying
know
it
the distance
does.
to the sun, please?
You keep saying that. You keep
Why-
saying
why
that.
the
So let's have an
Answer
answer.
the question clearly.
Let's have an answer.
Huey, answer the question. How do you know the distance to the sun?
I don't know. It's got nothing to do with
Right,
this.
that's the.
It has absolutely nothing
Thank
to do
you.
with it. We're
That was my
talking
point.
about.
You don't know.
We're talking about how big something looks.
No,
How
it's
big
asking you a
something
different
is.
question in relation to this, which is that there is basically it's put forward that we do know the size of the sun, and it's all from what Philip asserted, and now we're going through that circular reasoning with you. Now, Huey has basically admitted we don't know the distance to the sun.
Nathan.
You don't know the
Demonstrate
distance, do you,
that
Huey?
before to me. You don't understand circular reasoning.
Don't tell me you don't understand. Do you or do
What
you
is it
not
then?
know
Well,
the
define it.
distance to
What-
the
what
sun,
is circular
Huey?
reasoning? Give me the definition.
Huey, you've been asked a very specific question. You've already answered it. You don't know.
Don't know what.
Nathan, you cannot discuss with Wiley the role of apparent size in determining the distance to the sun when Riley cannot understand and accept the actual meaning of angular size.
How do you know the
That
distance to the
needs-
sun, Curved?
that needs to
How
be
do you
hammered
know
out
the
first
distance to the sun?
before anything
How do you know
can
the distance to the
progress.
sun then?
Right now, we're not talking about that. We're talking
I am.
about
That's what I'm doing
angular
right
size
now.
is.
That's your question. Well,
This
Okay,
whole
well, then you go
this
ahead
whole
and talk
conversation
about
started
that.
from me asking
Change
Lewis,
the
how does he
topic.
know the
I am
distance to the
talking
sun?
about angular
That's where it came
size
from. That's
is
the
the
context.
angle subtended by the object for the position of the observer. That's what
How do you know
angular
the
size
distance to the
is.
sun,
Until you
Curved?
understand that, is somebody else
How do you
talking?
know the distance to the sun?
Riley
can-
already said he would accept measured size. He said that.
Yeah,
I heard him say
but
it.
in the context of the point that we were discussing, which has been
Yes,
since Lewis, how do you
angular
know the
size
distance to the
is.
sun?
That's all anyone ever means by it.
Huey, you can't nail down a ball of slime.
Yeah, apparently.
I think that's pretty
Can't
obvious.
calculate the
I thought
distance
we
to
were
the
done.
sun
I
without
really was
knowing
trying
its
to help, and
actual
I thought I made
size.
progress because
and they
Riley
can't
just said
tell us where the
he would-
pointer there is on the composite
he would
either.
accept measured
Correct.
size. He said he would accept that.
Or they
He doesn't
won't.
now,
want help.
Show.
now all of a sudden he's backpedaling.
We already
Yeah,
know
he
the
said-
answer.
He said
No,
he would
Huey,
accept
I'm not
that.
backpedaling. I'm maintaining my position. I'm reasserting my position. I get the measured angle bit. I get the angular size discussion. The context was always, and it still is, how do you know the distance to the sun? So even if you're arguing over the exact location, precision of the wording and all that, I get it. However, in the application to the point we were making, how do you know the distance to the sun? Tell me. Huey's already said he doesn't. That's fine. Curved, tell me.
Well, he's not going to get an opportunity because I'm going to round out the show now. So with that, I'm going to first and foremost say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and sharing this live stream. Be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. My kid does this at the end of every broadcast now. So let's get my buttons lined up. Be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley and I'll see you all in the next video.